Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras.
And I'm Natasha Kircha. Coming up in today's newscast, a shooting attack on a German synagogue comes amid rising anti-Semitism in Europe.
We'll break down everything you need to know about Israeli coalition talks.
Israel and the world are still reeling from the latest anti-Semitic attack, this time in Halle, Germany, targeting a synagogue on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in Judaism.
The attack, which the killer live-streamed on social media, left 2 dead, one outside the synagogue entrance and another at a nearby kebab shop.
On Wednesday, in Halle, East Germany, neo-Nazi Stefan Ballier began his attack with a live presentation through his smartphone camera. In it, he explains how he believes Jews are at the root of all Western problems, how the Holocaust is a lie, and that he was preparing to commit an attack against a synagogue nearby.
Then, in the assault that commences, he lobs multiple homemade explosions at the synagogue, which bolts its doors and calls the police. He releases several bursts of gunfire, killing an elderly woman passing by. And
finally, before ending his 35-minute broadcast, he goes to a nearby kebab restaurant, executes one of the men inside, escapes a gunfight with police, and tosses the phone out of the moving car. Police later captured Ballier, though, reporting only that he is being treated.
Well, in a statement just after the holiday ended, Prime Minister Netanyahu says that Israel sends its condolences to the families of the victims and wishes a speedy recovery for the injured, but also that Germany needs to act determinately against the phenomenon of rising anti-Semitism in Europe.
Likewise, Israeli President Rivlin says he was stunned and pained by the terrible anti-Semitic murders in Germany committed during Yom Kippur, adding also that we will continue to campaign for better education and remembrance, in that the problem is not with the Jews alone, but threatens to destroy us all.
As for Germany, Chancellor Angela Merkel also condemns the shooting, adding an expression of solidarity for all the Jews and deep sympathy for the victims' loved ones. She also says that the fact that the attack occurred on Yom Kippur hits us in the heart, while Foreign Minister Heiko Maas then later tweeted, quote, "We must all act against anti-Semitism in our country."
But not everyone is buying the well wishes, with the AJC CEO David Harris saying, "We've been warning for years anti-Semitism is real and lethal," and the head of Halle's Jewish community criticizes the police for responding briefly and then going back to the status quo. In the same way, the Central Council of Jews in Germany blasts the German authorities for negligence in handling this and previous such attacks.
Specifically, on the same day as the shooting, Berlin released a Syrian man who attempted to enter a synagogue with a knife just days before, screaming Allahu Akbar and F Israel as he tried to get inside. But despite security catching him red-handed, he was released citing insufficient evidence, which the German Jewish Central Council calls woefully inadequate and dangerous.
Now, joining us to discuss the rise in anti-Semitism in Europe is Daniel Seaman, director of the Middle East Forum in Israel. Thanks so much for joining us. So, our first question is, how is Europe dealing with this kind of anti-Semitic incident, and what can it be doing differently? Because we seem to be seeing a rise throughout the entire region.
Well, it's not a rise. It's a return to the way things were before World War II. It seems that the shock of the Holocaust did affect people, and it wasn't acceptable to speak this way about Jews, and it's come back to haunt us, or not us, but to haunt the Europeans. Things that our ancestors had to deal with, now they're dealing with it, but they're dealing with it in a way that they believe if they ignore it, it'll somehow disappear, or it's just a Jewish problem. And what you see here is these 2 people who were murdered. One of them, the one woman, she walked by, she said something to the man, and he shot her because of that. I don't know if she's Jewish or not. I don't know if he knew if she was Jewish or not. And the hatred in which he fired and shot at her, he was frustrated for not being able to get into the building itself. And he took that out on her. And this is what people have to understand. It is not just about Jews. Jews are the easy target. Jews are the obvious target. But it's going to affect all of them. It'll affect all of Europe, all of law-abiding and decent people. And that's what the Europeans have to understand.
Well, you talked a little bit about the education now, but I know that in Germany, for one example, they've made a very concentrated effort to teach Holocaust studies and what happened and how it happened and what led to the events that occurred. So, I mean,
I don't know what's going on in Germany. I've never lived there, but I know that it's not just an issue that pertains to the Holocaust. The Holocaust was a consequence of years of anti-Semitism that built in Europe, and it came out in its most violent form in the Holocaust itself. But it's an issue that some will say the church, the Catholic Church is behind it, some will say Protestants. I say they breathe it in the air of Europe. And if they don't address it, and how are they not addressing it? It's not only the education of the Holocaust, it's not to accept. It should be totally unacceptable. The way that you can't make remarks about gay people, the same as you can't speak about Muslims and you immediately dubbed as Islamophobic, they should understand it is not acceptable, not for left-wing circles, not for right-wing circles, not for the academia, not for media, not for anybody in this case. While I'm talking, I'm thinking about cases that had it happen in France, where you have journalists speaking and bringing out anti-Semitic venom, and the most they'll get is a slap on the wrist. This should be totally unacceptable.
Would you say that there is a relationship between these anti-Semitic attacks in the state of Israel and the way that it is currently viewed in the media?
The only way that it connects to Israel is that we now personify the Jewish people in the sense that they can divert it. So anti-Semitism has now, and many people will say this, has sort of changed itself into anti-Zionism. The only people whose desire for self-determination is being questioned and doubted are the Jewish people. There are other peoples around the world who've been fighting for self-determination. Nobody turns this or their movement into something negative. Those same people who are anti-Semitic have now changed from anti-Semitism have moved into anti-Zionism, and that becomes acceptable in respectable circles, such as academia, such as in the media. This should be not tolerated under no circumstances whatsoever.
Well, you know, this is just such a shocking event, especially, you know, given what one would say, you know, positive relationship that exists between Germany and Israel, and then this coming out of it.
I'm not so sure about
that.
Because
that's for our next interview. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, and just as predicted, Turkey is now launching a full assault on Kurdish positions in eastern Syria, following the United States' army's withdrawal from the region. And this beginning on Wednesday, Ankara's ground and air forces bombarded the Kurds along the full length of the border, sending thousands of civilians running. Then Turkey followed up with a large-scale ground operation to finish the job. At least half a dozen civilians and over 110 Kurdish fighters have been reported killed so far. Turkish President Erdogan, though, has long stated publicly that he seeks to free up the area of eastern Syria to create a safe zone where he can house Syrian refugees rather than release them into Europe, as he's previously threatened. Erdogan has also publicly called for the destruction of the Kurdish military forces in the region, however, who have been crucial in the fight against ISIS terror. Because despite working closely with the United States and its allies, Erdogan sees the Kurdish forces as terrorists for being member to the Syrian Democratic Forces. Well, the EU, NATO, and regional powers have all blasted the latest events, calling on Turkey to show restraint. And even many American military officials have expressed concerns over the pullout of American forces, especially as it's expected to drive away allies like the Kurds, divert attention and pressure away from the Islamic State terror group, and create a power vacuum that would embolden nations like Iran. And in fact, that's Israel's primary concern, as Channel 13's military analyst Or Heller explained Wednesday night. Heller says that Trump's isolationism will encourage Iran to do what it did to Saudi Arabia's oil facilities, attack. And similarly, both Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Rivlin have called on Israelis and the world to see how Iran is getting stronger and is attacking around the world, adding that this isn't spin and it's not a whim, nor is it just Netanyahu trying to scare us. And now Natasha is joining us all the way from the other side of the studio with a political rundown. So take it away, Natasha.
All right, so it's been almost a month since the Israeli national elections, and you're probably wondering what the next Israeli government is going to look like, but that's a complicated question to answer. So here's the breakdown on what's happening. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been given the mandate to form the next coalition, even though his party Likud only won 32 seats in the election, which is 1 seat less than his main opposition, Blue and White, which won 33. So why was he given the mandate to form a government? Well, it's because he has 55 seats of support from right-wing parties, including United Torah Judaism, Yamina, and Shas, which adds up to a larger bloc than the 54 center-left-wing seats that Blue and White's Benny Gantz was able to secure. Here's the problem, though. An Israeli coalition government requires a majority of 61 seats out of 120 in the Knesset, and Netanyahu still doesn't have those seats. So where do things stand now? Well, Israel's still looking at a deadlock. From the beginning, Israeli President Reuven Rivlin has been pushing for a unity government that would see both Likud and Blue and White joining forces. Doing so would most likely mean that Netanyahu and Blue and White number one Gantz would implement rotational leadership, in which both party leaders would each serve 2 years as prime minister, but power would be equally divided. But the problem is that Netanyahu says he would only sit in a government with Blue and White if it included his right-wing allies, and Blue and White will not agree to that. Blue and White also is refusing to sit in a government with Netanyahu while the prime minister is awaiting results following his hearings for corruption charges. Now, the so-called kingmaker Avigdor Lieberman has presented a 4-point plan for a unity government. Lieberman is the chairman of the Israel Beitenu party, which won 8 seats in the elections, and he's refused to sit in a right-wing government under Netanyahu because he's against ultra-Orthodox parties being in the government. At the same time, he also refused to sit in a left-wing government under Gantz because he's against Arabs sitting in the government. In other words, he says that a unity government is the only scenario that he would support. In his plan, he says that there are 4 steps. First, Likud and Blue and White must clearly define all of the issues on the agenda: security, economy, social, and church and state. Then they should adopt President Rivlin's proposal for a power-sharing compromise, with Netanyahu serving first rotation as prime minister, and then they should pass the budget and a multi-year defense plan. At that point, other parties should be allowed to join the coalition if they agree to the government's guiding principles. Well, Likud has rejected the proposal, and Blue and White is welcoming it, which means that still Israel is in a deadlock. Here's the issue, though. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has been given until October 24th to form a coalition. That's a mere 2 weeks away, and if he fails, Benny Gantz will be given the chance to form a government. And if Benny Gantz can't do it either, well, say hello to third elections.
All right, now archaeologists have always thought that early man hunted and gathered for nearly every meal, but ILTV's Shanna Fold is here now with a new discovery that suggests otherwise. Shanna.
That's right, Aaron. Researchers say that cave dwellers were actually a bit more forward-thinking than they had previously thought. Right. Let's take a look at this. Now, today, when you want to hang on to your food for the future, you put it in a container and toss it in the freezer. But what did cave people do 400,000 years ago? Well, archaeologists at Tel Aviv University say it turns out they were able to store food for up to 9 weeks, completely disrupting the previous idea that early man had hunted and gathered every day. Researchers excavated animal bones from the Kesem cave, just east of Tel Aviv, and found that marrow was protected within the bones by the natural hide of the animal. So then archaeologists painstakingly mimicked the process using deer bones in order to get a sense of how it was done. Early people likely waited a few weeks for the skin to dry, then used sharp tools to slice down the skin, pull it away from the bone, and crack it open to suck out the marrow and grease whenever hungry. And for early man, this was a great source of nutrition, as it was much more caloric and substantial than carbs. Researchers pored over around 82,000 animal bones, with only 8% of them whole enough to examine for this excavation. Also inside the cave, many burnt flint pieces were found, indicating the kinds of cutting tools used, along with 13 teeth. But researchers believe the chompers did not belong to the Homo erectus species, rather another local population from the Levant region.
Now, we often hear about attacks motivated by nationalistic, political, and religious ideals, but we don't often get an answer to the most basic question. What drove the attacker to such lengths in the first place?
Well, a new Israeli movie called Incitement Now looks to cover the sensitive topic through the lens of a very personal story here in Israel, the 1995 assassination of former Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin.
And this film was selected as Israel's entry for Best International Film at the Academy Awards. And here with us today for more is the film's director, Yaron Zilberman. But first, let's take a look at a clip from the film.
אני כמו ציין לייזר, סמן מטרות וכובש את הנחת לא משנה.
מעניין מה המטרה הבאה שלך.
הדיבור שלך לוקח את התורה לדרך של קנאות ואכזריות. פגיעה בגמלה שלי.
All right, Yaron, so our first question here is just why did you choose this topic specifically to make a film about?
First, it's a trauma, a personal trauma. Me and part of my generation that were pro-peace, following Rabin's great grand vision. And, the killing of a prime minister, of Yitzhak Rabin, such a grand person and personality, as part of cutting the peace process by an Orthodox Jew shooting him.
Right. I mean, for many, when he was murdered, it felt as if that was the end of any chance for peace.
Exactly. And also, again, the identity of the shooter, understanding that it happened within us, within our society, not like an enemy, but an enemy within us, was so shocking that this trauma, I think everybody in Israel feels that trauma until today.
When you had some trouble even filming this, in a sense, you didn't get any funding from the government or any sort of help. Why do you think that is?
We say, for political reasons, people were afraid because it's government money, supposedly. It's the money of the people, it's taxpayers' money, so it's everybody's money, but at the same time, it was controlled by the culture minister, has a say on that, and people are, self-censored and things of that nature. So I think it played a role.
The term incitement, that's the name of the movie, and that's what this is ultimately about, right? How would you say that this film kind of relates to what's taking place in today's current, political environment? I
think we see that all over the world, especially in the United States with Donald Trump. Incitement became like sort of a strategy, a technique in order to get more votes from your base, which means you are pitting, people against people, and by doing that, you rally your people to go and vote for you and support you and root for you, and we see that kind of thing happening all over the world, and I hope the movie will open the eyes of how the inner working of incitement, how it works, how the effect of it, and eventually that it leads to extreme violence.
But that's the thing. People can say things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody is going to go get a gun and then murder the prime minister of a country, right? That's a crazy thing to do.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how you prepared for this film, especially the actor that played the role of Yigal Amir, which is an insane role to prepare for.
Yeah, so part of it, it was physical and mental preparation. On the mental side, I asked him to become Orthodox, which that's what he did, which means going to the synagogue 3 times a day, wear kippah, tzitzit.
So this actor actually had to become Orthodox?
Actually became Orthodox for the period of, the pre-production, the period of the shooting, shooting, double meaning.
Right.
And also, he, read all the material because Yigal Amir was interviewed both, in the interrogation in court, and also there was this national investigation committee. So he spoke and spoke. So he read all, and this like tens of pages of his logic, very sort of way back it was sick, now it's mainstream. But that kind of logic, I'm sorry to say that, but that kind of logic that brings eventually the assassination, and being so confident in his way and not remorseful.
But how do you prepare for a role like that and stay
you read
sane?
it and read and think, he was, so he didn't. When I met him for the first time in audition, he was like a hippie. Okay, happy-go-lucky, life is amazing. And slowly but surely he became Yigal Amir. And at some point he was so into murdering Rabin that it was hard to get him out of that. He really felt that kind of hatred.
How did all of you come out of this? This is a very traumatic thing to relive.
It's a process. I still live that because, the film doesn't stop when you start, filming. It's an editing process that takes a year, and then you take it out to the world. And again, we talk about it and feel it, and I think that trauma still lingers on us nationally and personally.
All right, well, listen, I have a million more questions here. I guess if you could just tell us in one line, what was the reaction from the families that watched this, the Rabin family and the Amir family?
The Rabin family was really embracing the movie in a beautiful way. We had this screening with lead actors, and Dalia and her daughter, Noah, and they saw the movie, and we were, there's a lot of anxiety involved, and they cried from beginning to end, and then hugged Yehuda, who plays Yigal Amir, thanking him for portraying it in such a profound and honest and authentic way, so that the impact will be strong. So it's actually
that just gave me the shivers. All right, Yaron, thank you so much. I cannot wait to see this movie, and good luck. Good luck at the Academy Awards.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, the Tel Aviv municipality and Palkai Elkon Ganei Yehoshua have teamed up to try and save the earth, and they're doing it in what might seem like an odd way. Here with the story is ILTV's Nittany Manson.
All right, growing up, what was your least favorite chore? I know mine was mowing the lawn. And I guess the Tel Aviv municipality and Ganei Yoshua agree with me because they did a little outsourcing.
We're trying to use sheep for grazing, but the purpose of this grazing is not for agriculture, it's for ecology.
The sheep thin out the grass, chowing down on weeds, which allows beautiful flowers to blossom, which luckily the sheep don't find very appetizing. How do you like grazing this land? I think he likes it. I'm in love.
I am the sheep by the help of my 2 dogs. We come here once a week for 4 hours each time. Kadima, lie down, come by.
Come by. Come by.
You should
Atzri. Kadima. Kadima. All right, so it looks like I'm not going to take over your job here.
In this bird walking park, I think it's the best place to be in Tel Aviv. In this project, we restore the local habitat. We plant local plants, and now what's happening is the nature come back. Visitors that come here get inside of these huts, and they can see the birds in the surface of the water.
And not only is there so much to see in the park already, but there's always restoration projects happening here trying to renew the ecological landscape.
The people can understand, they can do a change. We destroyed habitats, destroyed nature, but also we can bring back nature.
And while it's easy to get lost in fast-paced city life, it's comforting to know that in the heart of Tel Aviv, there is a place where you can take a breath of fresh air and learn about our environment. And plus, while it'd be easy to hire a few lawnmowers once a month, you just can't beat the sheep.
Now, if you're looking for the most amazing place to be in Tel Aviv, look no further than the Guinness Complex. And for a closer look at all the area has to offer, we meet up with none other than ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh.
The Guinness Complexes are situated in the most coveted location in Tel Aviv.
This is the highest residential floor in Tel Aviv.
And I'm here.
And I owe you now.
Yeah.
Oh,
The Guindy penthouse located on the 48th floor is still up for sale, and trust me, it's a deal you won't want to pass on.
It's about 4,500 square feet, 500 feet balcony, 6 bedroom, 2 ensuite, 2 bathroom and a dressing room.
You'd have an unobstructed view of the Israeli beaches from Herzliya to Ashdod, as well as a complete panoramic view of the Tel Aviv metropolitan.
Another 2 bathroom and 2 half bathrooms, 8 elevators, a park that belongs to the project. There is a gym, wine cellar, fashion mall, which is unique in Israel. 4 premium parking spaces.
Young adults all the way to families are all living here in the Guinness Complexes, and for good reason. There's something for everyone.
This area is prime location.
We have schools here, we have a lot of office and a lot of companies here, so you can see pretty much of everything.
זהו, פה יש לך את הבימה.
זה מטורף, זה נראה שאתה יכול פשוט לקפוץ לשם.
מפה הולכים לים.
So for anyone interested in this gorgeous Guindy penthouse, make sure to check the link below.
Now, the apartment that Emmanuel visited is on the market for $6.5 million, which is negotiable according to its owner. So if you're looking for real luxury in the center of Tel Aviv, this may be the ticket, Aaron.
No, it sounds perfect.
Yeah,
I'm taking
all
it.
in, cash on the table.
I'm taking it, it's mine.
All right, guys, sorry. Looks like it's taken. All right, a look at the weather forecast now. The weekend is just around the corner with an extra 2 days off for the Israeli public because of Sukkot. Now, starting in the north with Katzlin and Haifa, the low will be about 66 or 19 degrees Celsius, and then the high over the weekend will be about 90 or 32 degrees Celsius.
And next, moving south to Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, the low will be about 62 or 17 degrees Celsius. Moving up to tomorrow to a high of 83 or 28 degrees Celsius.
Finally, in the south with Beersheba and Eilat, we have lows tonight of 66 or 19 degrees Celsius and sunny highs of 91 or 33 degrees Celsius. So as per usual, slather on that sunscreen and don't forget to drink water.
All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.5 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. I'm Aaron Porras.
And I'm Natasha Kirchuk. Thanks for watching and see you next Tuesday.